The Griot Podcast.
All right. Give us 1 second. Let me see just want to make sure something is good on my end. Yep, something is good on my end. All right. Welcome back to the Griot Podcast. I am Kofi Piesie, one of the hosts of the Griot Podcast. I run down a few of my things. I am a writer, an author, an entrepreneur, a publisher, a content creator, amongst many other things.
And I am Sean P. from the Sean P. Experience. I am a 6-time self-published author, public speaker, podcast host, researcher, bibliophile, book activist. And we in here. Episode 4, man. 4 times for your mind. What you think about that, Kofi?
Oh yeah, man. I'm ready, man. It seems like, boy, we shooting once a month, man. But these episodes, they see like they
dropping, Kofi. Things dropping.
Yeah. So give it up, man, for the Griot Podcast one time. Yes, sir. We in this thing, man. I'm gonna run down before we get started. Let me run down the segments for today's show. All right. So the opening is always honoring somebody. That's the opening segment, the Griot segment, the history segment, the storytelling segment, the music discussion, the current events, and my favorite segment, which is the woman segment. So that is the outline of the Griot Podcast. And before we get started, this episode is called The Black Church, What Happened, right? So I'm gonna put a disclaimer. We're gonna put a disclaimer out here, and then we're gonna put a disclaimer out here again when we get into the actual discussion. So the disclaimer is this information that we are sharing is for educational purpose only. And if you are in doubt, do the research and have it verified by someone qualified. I reserve the right to add information as it comes available or adapt changes, improve information as it comes available in the future. Inputs wanted, changes, additions, deletions are encouraged. This episode is not to bash, put down, or insult anyone's belief or religion. It is merely to discuss the past history of the Black church and the current state of the Black church. So we wanted to put that disclaimer out, and we will come back again and put that disclaimer out again because it's important that we do not insult anyone's belief or religion.
No. Not at all. We're being totally objective today. And whenever both of us talked about raising this conversation up, just for the chat so they can realize what's going on, Sister Billy in the building, was up to the chat. Even in private for the past month, so the audience can know, even in private conversation, we have never spent 5 minutes bashing anybody's religion. Mm-hmm. Would you say so, Kofi?
Nah, we haven't, no doubt.
We ain't never spent 5 to 10 minutes, let alone hours in the past month. We ain't never set up the tearing down, bashing, crashing nobody's stuff. So don't worry about that. In this episode, we're not doing that.
Right.
This is an objective, educational session.
For sure. And we're definitely going to dig into the historical record when it comes to the Black church, right?
That's right.
So let's open it up with the honoring segment, right? My honoring segment, we always got to honor someone from the past, right? So today I'm going to honor Alex Cromwell, right? Alex Cromwell was born March the 3rd, 1819, September the 20th, 1898. By the way, this man is who I strive to be. This man is why I'm doing some of the things that I'm actually doing. This man and his model and his blueprint that him and others had, I'm trying to emulate and build on that and keep their legacy alive. But he was an American minister in academia, ordained as an Episcopal priest in the United States. Cromwell went to England in the late 1840s to raise money for his church by lecturing about American slavery, abolishes supported his 3 years of study in Cambridge University, where Cromwell developed a concept of Pan-Africanism and was the school's first recorded black student and graduate. In 1853, Cromwell moved to Liberia, where he worked to convert Africans to Christianity and to educate them, as well as to persuade African American colonists colonialists of his ideals. He wanted to attract American blacks to Africa on a civilized mission. Cromwell lived and worked for 20 years in Liberia and appealed to America's blacks to join him, but he did not gather wide support for his ideal. After returning to the United States in 1872, Cromwell was called to St. Mary Episcopal Mission in Washington, D.C. in 1827. He and his congregations founded the St. Luke Episcopal Church, the first independent black Episcopal church in the city. Cromwell served as a rector there until the retirement of 1864. Cromwell also, y'all, was a founder of the American Negro Academy. At one time was the American African Academy. So we're going to talk more about that when we get into the discussion. But I want to send honor and praises to the late and great ancestor Alexander Cromwell.
Yes, sir. Give it up. Give it up. Give us some props to the man. Before I get into my segment, right, I want to talk about this a little tidbit. So he went over to England for a while to raise money to bring back, right? And I find it curious, for the past 5 or 6 years studying biographies and autobiographies. A lot of our ancestors went overseas at one point, man. Mm-hmm. Like, they knew at the time. It's different now with the westernized white supremacy, but at the time they was treated a lot better overseas than here in the United States.
Yep.
A lot of our actors, singers, performers, scholars ended up going across the pond, as they say, for a period of time, bro. Mm-hmm. You know?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. I'm going to go to my honoring segment. I am talking about James Cone. James Cone. For those in the chat that's listening, man, if Kofi and I talk about the amount of books we read for one episode, it's ridiculous. And the amount of documentaries that we watch for one episode is crazy. James Cone, we could have did a whole hour on James Cone alone, right? James Cone, born 1938. He died in 2018, was a prominent African-American theologian and professor. He is often considered the founder of the Black liberation theology, a theological perspective that emerged during the civil rights movement. We'll speak on the civil rights later specifically. Cone's work focused on intersection of Christianity and the African-American experience, addressing the issues of race, oppression, and liberation. In his groundbreaking book, Black Theology and Black Power, this is in 1969, Cone argued that Christianity should address the liberation of Black people from the social, economic, and political structures of racism and white supremacy. A Black theology of liberation, this is 1970, further developed his ideas, emphasizing the central role of Jesus Christ as the liberator of the oppressed and the embodiment of Blackness. Cone believed that God's identity is fundamentally linked to the oppressed and the marginalized, aligning with the struggles of Black people for liberation. If you get a chance, anybody out there in the chat, do yourself a favor, go on Amazon, wherever you like to shop at. They got a good bit of James Cone books out there that's groundbreaking, man. You ought to check that out.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to check that Black Power.
I got a few of them out.
Okay.
Yeah, I had an OG put me on about 3-4 years ago to James Cone and his work.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to check out that Black Power book, man.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if you like the author Dr. Ibram X. Kendi, you and I talk about that guy a lot lately. The writer of Stand from the Beginning and How to Be an Anti-Racist, all of those things. His parents came from that school of thought. His mom and dad, they met at a place like that. That's where they met at.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, most definitely, man. I'm definitely gonna have to check out a couple of those books, man. Oh, that Black Power is definitely. But the Griot segment. Let's get into the Griot segment, man.
Yes, sir.
The Griot segment. We're just gonna briefly talk about this real quick. We're not gonna go through anything, But by now y'all should know what a griot is. But we know the griots are unique to West Africa, right? Or the Jali and the Wolof, right? So we know it's unique to West Africa. The griot or Jali, professional, encompass many roles. The griot, pronounced griot, has been referred to as a historian and storyteller, but there is no real words in the English language to include all of their functions. And traditional griot could do everything from recounting history to composing music to teaching students to acting as a diplomat. They are genealogists, historians, spokespeople, ambassadors, musicians, teachers, warriors, interpreters, praise singers, masters of ceremonies, advisors and negotiations, and mediators. Right. So I'm gonna leave it right there with the griots. You want me to do the griot real quick? Just
Yeah, you can. You can. You can.
and the griot is the version of the griot, right? The female version, right? She facilitates as many roles as possible. The female griot is also a storyteller, right? She's a singer. She's a praise dancer. She's a poet. She's an ambassador. She's a teacher. She is amongst the elite when it comes to the women in their society. The griot and the griot as an important role that they play in West African history. We will have more about the griot and the griotes in our new publication, which we'll be talking about tomorrow, which y'all already should already see the flyer of me and Seanathan already up with the actually release date of the book, which is August the 28th. Pre-orders are go up tomorrow, but we'll talk about that on tomorrow. But yeah, that concludes the Griot segment, right? So let's get into the history segment, right? The
Yeah,
history
man.
is about the Black church. And before we get into this, man, let me know what was we talked about this um in the back chat. Most of our episodes has been just us in the in the DMs, chopping it up or on the phone,
Yeah.
just chopping up and having discussions. And we like, man, we ought to make that an episode, right?
Always.
Right.
Even last night. Even last night.
Right.
Happened
Yeah.
last night.
Right. So a lot of times we already got our episodes planned because there are
Yeah.
discussions that we talked about, man. So we was,
Yeah.
we just had a discussion about the Black church and how the Black church, gets a bad name, right? And some of us, don't dig through the historical record, especially in the conception of the Black church, and some of the things that it has done. So we're gonna talk about some of the things that it actually is done and what happened. You know what I'm saying? What happened in the 21st century, right? So again, I want to put this disclaimer out here before we get started, right? Again, this information that we are sharing is for educational purpose only. And if you are in doubt, do the research and have it verified by someone qualified. I reserve the right to add information as it comes available or adapt changes or improve information as it comes available in the future. Um, Inputs wanted, changes, additions, deletions, or encouraged. This episode is not to bash, put down, or insult anyone's belief or religion. It is merely to discuss the past history of the Black church and the current state of the Black church. So again, we wanted to throw that disclaimer out here before we actually get started with the discussion on the
You
Black
know,
church. Go ahead.
you know what, Kofi? I had a little parallel came to my mind just now, right? A little loose parallel. You know how, like the inception of the Black Panther Party, for example, or you can go to Crips and the Bloods, the GDs and the Vice Lords, right? When you do the actual history on some of those things and look at what the original purpose and the meaning was versus what it evolved to, how we see it present day. You say the word Crip or Blood right now, a person might have a total negative image come to their mind based on TV, music, movies, whatever, versus the inception of those groups, right? I think as the more you read about the history of the purpose and the original intent when it comes to the Black churches, especially after the Civil War, during Reconstruction, versus what we think about that word now. It's a whole stark. It's a stark contrast.
Mm-hmm.
So unless you read about the inception and what it was meant for and what it was doing, and then you see how it deteriorated over generations, over time, like most things do. It'll totally skew your lens on it.
Yep. Most definitely it will, man. And so we gonna start off, man. We got some bullet points. We not gonna be able to cover all the bullet points, but the first,
Impossibility.
yeah. So the first, and like I said, like he said earlier,
We
like
tabbed up. We
we
tabbed up. We
we
tabbed up.
we read a lot of
Man,
couple of books
could
on
you
this
finish them all? Not on
and
time,
right, not on time.
bro.
And
Documentaries.
documentaries. We paid for documentaries. We looked at documentary, but prior to coming into this conversation, we already have been
Yeah, but
versed.
we had
Already been
yeah,
versed in this,
yeah.
and
In our life,
right.
our
So
real life.
so we already knew, like some of the material I already knew that I showed earlier. I already knew some of the books I read over the years. I can, we can draw information from that as well as this publication that we got out. I mean, this publication that we was reading, the Black Church, right? So we want to start off with. I want to start out with the 4th century, and walk your way up.
I got a question first, Cole. Before you dive into history, I got a question for you. Just your overall opinion as a consumer. How was this publication, by the way? The Black Church. This is by Henry Louis Gates Jr. This is our story. This is our song. Is the name of the title. What's your overall consumer? What you think?
I thought the book was a good read. I'm gonna tell you, like I told you in the beginning, I thought I wasn't gonna like the book. I'll be honest. I thought I was gonna. I came in already with a bias. I thought, what I'm saying, the book was gonna be super apologetic about Christianity and some of the things that happened, with our people, man. But it was totally, the opposite of what I thought the book was gonna be, man. So it was a great read for me. Great read for me. Um, he did a good job with documenting a lot of the information. Walking us all the way up to the conception of the Black Church and some of the things that the Black Church did in its early conceptions. But they talked about, before we get started, they talked about adopting, right? So I have conversation with people, and people say Christianity always been in Africa, right? Christianity is an African religion, right? And we can go back and forth with the word traditional because, you know, people say something that's hundreds of years old can be something traditional, right? It's so many different words. I mean, so many different meanings now when it comes to traditional, right?
Yeah.
So Christianity, when you go into the historical record and you start to look at certain things, you will always see adopt, 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 adopt. So a lot of our ancestors adopted and accepted Christianity, right? You know what I'm saying? So I just want to make that clear that they adopted it. Be prior to any other outsider coming into the interior of Africa, we had our own African traditional religion, which I don't like to use that word, Kimoyo, right? So you will have things like you go to Ghana, and you go to Ghana, right? You see you see Akumi, right? You go to Nigeria, you might see Ifa or Isheshe, or you might see Ordinani, right? You might go to East Africa, you might say Gulu Wankulu, right? It's so many different. You might go to Benin, you might see Voodoo, which became voodoo later on in Haiti, with those slaves going into Haiti, and then you will see voodoo in New Orleans, which is something that's been painted a demonic thing. Once you understand all those things has been painted as a demonic thing or paganism and so forth. But we'll probably talk about that later on. But let's get to the 4th century, right? And me saying that was the 4th century. This has been over 2,000 years ago. We know, and it's so many different accounts when it comes to Rufus, the historian, and when it comes to um, um, Socrates Scholasticus, who also was a historian. There are like seven different accounts I have read over the years dealing with Thermithimus. Thermithimus was a guy who came into Ethiopia and was said to convert or convince King Enza to convert into Christianity, right? So if you understand African traditional religion, or you understand African religion, whatever you or African spirituality, or you understand Kimoyo, then you will understand that the king is also a high priest of whatever they have, right? So most of the time, if the king converts or adopts something, then the entire society will follow suit and do the same thing. So in the
Yeah.
4th century, that's what happened, and also it was to solidify um trading with each other. You know what I'm saying? So you see that in Ethiopia in the 4th century, and there, like I said, I'm not gonna go through those seven. That's seven different accounts of Mithras being ship being crashed, he being a prisoner war. He became a friend of King Enza when he was a prince, and through that time, their friendship, that's when he become king. He convert. It's so many different accounts of from Mithras ship crash, and he met a Christian merchant that was there trading with the Ethiopians. And he converted, and then he got king. It's so many different accounts. Historians, I don't know which account it was. There's so many different stories, but y'all can research that. The 5th century, like I said, you see the same thing with King Alfonso. That is his Christian name, Alfonso the First, who is King Mvimba of Azinga, right? So he converted and adopted to Christianity when they was trading back and forth with the Portuguese. So he solidified his trading with the Portuguese by converting and taking on a Christian named Alfonso the First. So you see that through the historical record that we adopted Christianity from outsiders, but we're going to talk about what happened once we get to America, what happened with us adopting those certain things when we adopted Christianity getting to America. But in the 4th century, you see Christianity 2,000 years ago, which a lot of people don't talk about. In the 15th century, you see it in the 15th century with the Portuguese, right? So you see it with the British, you see it with the Portuguese, and then you will see it later on with Spain, with the Spanish, with the British, with the French, and so forth. Once we get here into America, but I wanted to set the tone of, especially at that time, prior to the Atlantic slave trade, we say that this was forced, but at times, if you look through the historical record, they just adopted willingly, and a lot of it was through just trade and through trade. You know what I'm saying? Showing you that, okay, we adopted this, for trade. So I wanted to start that out with that, man, with the 4th and the 5th century. Y'all can do more on that with the Portuguese. Just go look up the Portuguese coming into Central Africa, into the Congo interior. Go do your research on that. And in the 4th century, go do your research, study Rufus the historian and Socrates Scholasticus the historian, and you can see some of those counts, and you can see some of those other things through archaeology. Go also study the archaeology records as well, and you will see some of those things, and it will verify some of the things that I'm actually talking about.
Yeah, no doubt on the history, baby. You got that, no doubt.
So you want to go into let's go into the praise houses, man. We're gonna go into the praise house.
We'll come over to that. We go in there first. I gotta go to my little tabs and there we go. See where it's checked off at. So what I want to say on the praise houses piece first is, after the Civil War, Black people are just becoming liberated, if you will, loosely. And, they want to have their own places to worship, to gather. During slavery, it was highly illegal to be caught reading and writing. It was highly, sometimes illegal for them to gather at all. We still see it to this day. If you have a certain amount of Black folks together in one spot, what they call that legally to this day, right? So these praise houses was a safe space to get together, gather, and pray, but besides having service and praying, they can talk to each other about so and so had a baby down the road. They had a baby. So and so died. So and so got married. They was able to interact and pass information in these praise houses as well. Besides just the service.
Right. No doubt. I'm gonna read a little bit about the praise houses. The praise houses, sometimes called prayer houses, function as the antebellum South Carolina plantation as both the epitome of the slave culture and one of the oldest praise houses is still in South Carolina. Right now, both the epitomes of the slave culture is a symbol of resistance to the slaveholders' oppressed version of Christianity. It says oppressed version of Christianity. They begin to take on their own renditions. They begin to reinterpret in their own way when they was reading the Bible or so forth before you get to the slave Bible, right? Because later on this, they created this slave Bible with certain verses in there because they no longer wanted them to utilize certain texts in the book, which most of them drawn to, and most of the people that I see today still draw to that Exodus story. The story of the Israelites and Moses and letting my people go and etc. Right? So they took pieces of what they were utilizing to rebel against, to fight, to try to liberate themselves. But it says a general simple clipboard structure built as a slave themselves praise houses was created with the knowledge it's not always the complete approval of the mass class. Meeting the praise houses usually occurred 1 week rather than on Sunday morning. Pious masters prefer that their slaves be attended at the wide dominant church where sermons bolsters the slave systems of carefully chosen spiritual texts. Right? I'm not going to read all of this, but like he said, those were places where they would go and gather. And a lot of times they wouldn't even have furniture. They wouldn't have a pew in there because they wanted to get in there. A lot of you, if you are familiar with what is it, ring shouting, right? Ring shouting is some of the things that they were doing and that you see right now. Some of you that may still attend the churches, right? You might see them get up and shouting and stomping their feet and clapping their hands and moving and circle and praises and this is exactly what they was doing in those praise houses. They was praising, shouting and dancing and singing and stomping, right? And you see this same thing, into the churches today, the praise shouting, right? Which is also something that they brung with them over here from Africa. These are some of the traditions that our ancestors had in an African culture. Praise dancing was one of those, especially when you look at a lot of the rituals that we had that we were attending, that we would do. We would praise and we would sing, right? So, and these praise houses will later on become what? Churches, right? They will become churches, right?
I want to go into a conversation we had. It's important for this conversation right now. And we're talking about the mega church concept. They have a lot going on today, right? All these huge structures, and you got thousands of members and all that stuff. Whatever, fine, dandy, right? But in my personal opinion, for what that's worth, opinion, I think that they had a better, more pure situation going on whenever it was those small praise houses, whenever they was worshiping in somebody's living room, somebody's kitchen, whenever it was on somebody's back porch, whenever they were gathering at these like little river situations, right? I think, in my opinion, there was probably a better, more pure situation than you have today, whereas these big old huge 3-story structures and thousands of people got like a stadium situation going on, like a basketball game or something, because it's less personal, right? And like I told you, my friend said, they're focused on building buildings and not people. I love when that brother said that sentence, man. They're focused on building buildings and not building the people as individuals. So I think back when they had those praise houses, the old church houses, they had something more potent going on back there.
I like that too. And that's definitely, but then we're gonna talk about that a little bit more because we want to talk about like what happened because we trying to walk y'all through like some of the things that the black church actually did, right? And then what the black church is not doing today, and what I'm gonna say, what I assume that I think that may happen, what may happen, or why we are not there, or they are not visible as they were at one point of time, right? So let's go when we talked about the praise houses, which develop into these black churches, right? So the black church was at one point, after going through slavery, Jim Crow, black clothes, was a place to escape all that. This was a place, man, where you can go to escape slavery. You know what I'm saying? A place to escape Jim Crow, a place to escape these black clothes. This was a place where you can go and you can, at that particular time to feel like somebody. So if I came into the black church at that particular time, Brother Sean, you know what I'm saying? How you doing, Brother Sean? You know what I'm saying? He will greet me back as Brother Sean. We know we will be treated like someone in these establishments. So this was a place to go to feel validated, to feel, feel validated, to feel, you know what I'm saying, or get that respect that you also deserve, right? So let me read from page 3 and page 4, the introduction to the black church. Something real simple, ain't gonna be nothing long at all. But I wanted to set the tone with this here. And it's on it says that with the language is all its own, symbols of all its own, the black church offered a reprise from racist world, a black place from African Americans to come together in communion to advance their aspiration, to sing out, pray out, and to shout out their frustrations. It was the saving grace of both enslaved black people and of the 10% or so of black communities that at any time before the Civil War was hostile and free, the site of possibilities for the limitation space between slavery and freedom, eject the subjects, slave and citizens, in which free black people were trapped. The church fueled the slave rebellions, nurtured the sustained Underground Railroad, and it was training ground for the orators of the abolition movement and the ministers such as Richard Harvey Kane, who emerged as a powerful and effective politician leader during Reconstruction. It powered anti-lynching campaigns and economic boycotts, and it formed the backbone of the meeting of the place for the civil rights movement. So the black church also fueled slave rebellions at this time. It fused we're talking about early the conception. We're not talking about what's going on currently now, because we want to wrap our head around what actually happened, because the black church facilitated a lot of things for us to have right now in the 21st century. And they were activists. They were in the community, right? They were heavy in the community trying to affect change, right? They was trying to bring which we're going to talk about education in a minute, liberation, equality, human rights. So they fought for a lot of these things, the people in the black church, right? And we revere a lot of individuals in the black church that was a part of the black church. So it said it fueled slave rebellions, it nurtured and sustained the Underground Railroad, right? And we're going to talk about that a little bit more too when we get to the woman segment. And it was a training ground for orators of the abolition movement. We know a lot of our black leaders that came out of the black church. Alex Cromwell was one of the guys that we revere, and a lot of people in my circle honor Alex Cromwell, who was a Christian, who was a minister, right? And he was, and a lot of black leaders that came out of the black church was also black abolishers who were against, slavery, anti-slavery, right? So, and the black church was also parents of the civil rights movement, right? And we may touch a little bit more about that, but the black church was the parents of the civil rights movement, who who got a lot of laws passed for us, for us to be able to have right now in the 21st century with some of the things that we have that they didn't have back then. So I just wanted to highlight some of those things when we're talking about the Black church and the conception of the Black church and their contributions at that particular time, um, fighting for our liberation, fighting for equality, fighting for human rights, fighting for our civil rights, fighting for us to vote, fighting against slavery, fighting for proper education. These were some of the things that came out of, or the contributions that came out of the Black church, or the conception of the Black church.
You know what else too came to my mind, Kofi? I can't remember where I read this at a long time ago, but it was like, even before the Civil War, even during slavery, like that one black pastor in the community for the black people, he might have been the only person that those crazy behind white folks respected and gave any kind of semblance of reverence to, right? That one black man was the only person that could probably try to vouch for a fellow slave, not to get him whipped or harmed, or not to get him sold somewhere. The mediator between the oppressor in the community was those original black pastors at that time. You know what I'm saying? They had a lot of power and reverence. Going back to more current times, how, and we'll get into it later, a lot of the politicians, they were pastors and preachers.
Yes.
That was the trajectory. You were always a pastor and a preacher, and you was in the civil matters. You know what I'm saying?
Yep,
that was always a link together kind of thing.
Right, you're right. A lot of and you know, a lot of the, and at that particular time, the intellectuals were pastors and ministers, right? Like, you know, a lot of our great leaders were pastors and ministers at you know, at that particular time. So, and when you look at you know, prior to during 1863, you know, the president at the time, Abraham Lincoln, you know, who passed the Emancipation Proclamation or whatever to free the slaves, right? In 1863, he gathered a lot of people don't know that he gathered a lot of black ministers to come to talk before he actually you know, put out the Emancipation Proclamation to free, you know, all slaves, right? You know what I'm saying? So they were very respected. Even those who had bought their freedom at that time, because we had free individuals, free black men, or free people of color prior to the emancipation. Those who may have bought, those who have bought their freedom, those who may also had churches at that particular time, because when you go through the historical record as well, you can see prior to the Emancipation Proclamation, or even in the coming of the Emancipation Proclamation and afterwards, you had free people of color who may have these small churches, and some of the slaves may have attended some of these churches. Because when you talk about some of these things, like the British Protestants, they were Protestant Christians, right? And they didn't believe in converting or forcing Christianity on the slaves, right? So a lot of times those people will praise at someone else's church or freedman church at that time. Then you had some who had churches that in order to have a service, one of the slave masters representatives had to be there to make sure that they are, you know, speaking in a way that they supposed to be speaking in, right? You know what I'm saying? In a subservient way. The slave masters is your master here on earth, all these type of things. So they had to make sure that they was on the up and up and wasn't talking about, you know, rebellions, because out of the church, a lot of people don't know that the black church was an assembly to talk about the rebellions. You know what I'm saying? They put on a lot of rebellions, but a lot of people go past that and say, because today the representation of the black church is different than what it was now. When we talk about the black church today, we know that they're not. We know that they are absent. We know that it's turned the other cheek. You know what I'm saying? It's shoot up a church and we just pray for them. We know that that attitude is going on now. But back then, that black church believed in rebellions. They believe in fighting back. They believe in shedding blood. So when you listen to some of the pastors who are ministers in some of their writings and some of their interviews, they talk about liberation through fighting. They talk about liberation through fighting, but through what we see today, you know what I'm saying, it's something totally different. So when I say that, it's hard for people to imagine that the black churches was talking about bloodshed. The black churches was talking about liberation.
When you simply just study some of the actual U.S. revolts that they had, they were most times led by a pastor.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Talking about Nat Turner, Denmark Vesey,
yep.
Gabriel, Presser.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
If we can go down the line, these wasn't like what I want to say, out of their mind, crazy behind dudes in the community. These were community leaders. These were people that were revered in their individual communities. They were respected, and the people that joined them did so from a good place, from a good following. Like, you our leader, we following you. Mm-hmm. You know?
Yep. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Peace to everybody in the chat, man. Y'all please like the show. Peace. Chat, man. Y'all please like the show, man. Like and share the show for us, man. Especially if you appreciate some of the history and talking about that, Sean, that also sparked the slave Bibles. You know, a lot of the again, going back, they was drawing from, specifically, they was drawing from, you know, the Israelite story at that time. You know, these people were was supposedly be in bondage, enslaved, and so they draw from, you know,
the curse of Ham and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So they draw from, you know, they draw from that. So they had to go and create a slave Bible with certain different, you know, scriptures, you know what I'm saying, and books in the slave Bible.
I like keeping things simple, man. Put it like this: any book in this world can be used as a tool, right? Even this book right here. If I have that kind of malicious intent in my mind, I can make you sway a certain way with this particular book. And if you don't read for yourself and understand for yourself, you'll follow what I'm saying in the wrong way. I can take this same exact book and do it in a good way, in a positive, uplifting, motivating way, and you will change your life in a great way. But this same exact, so the same thing with the Bible, you can piecemeal stuff together. You can piecemeal, put your spin on, put your energy on certain things and do it how you want to do it, right? And think back at that time, I don't know exactly what page it is in this book, so I ain't gonna try to find it right now, but after the Civil War, it was like, what, 90% illiteracy rate?
Yes, it was.
Those folks couldn't read and write for themselves to understand truly what that book was saying either way. They just got to go there and show up and listen and take it at face value.
Right. Because those anti-literacy laws that you know, were passed, you know. So
going to the education piece, right? They were so avid about learning and schooling. Right. I want to be able to read this book for myself.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that was a huge turning point.
Yep. So, and that's why you have at that time Reverend Alex Cromwell, who was the founder of the American Negro Academy, which W.D. Du Bois was also a member of, you know, and they was pushing the Talented 10 ideology, right? It was an ideology. It wasn't a Pacific 10 black men. It was an ideology. It was a thought process. It was they believed in making exceptional black men and women through education, you know what I'm saying, through reading, through writing, man. So let's get into the educational part, because, you know, and like I said, at one time they made a law, these anti-literacy laws that was passed. It was illegal. It was illegal for us to read and write. And coming out of slavery, man, the percentages was so high of illiteracy of black men and women coming out of slavery that could not read and could not write. So this is why they believe that education was important. So who begins to take on the task, Sean, to facilitate the task of educating
Yeah. And like,
the
like I
black
said,
church?
I'll put it simply, once again for the chat. You think about the old times back at that time, it was like a three-headed monster, right? That being education, that being the church, and that being your initial uh, divine nine, right? Your fraternities, your sororities, all of these things. A lot of times you go and study who are some of the leading ladies in education and the initial principals and school officiates and the best teachers. They were most times church ladies. They're leading the charge at church. These same ladies teaching Sunday school on Sunday morning. So besides just learning about Jonah in the whale and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, you learning how to read, you learning phonics, you learning sight words, you learning how to recite things, how to properly speak, the importance of memory. You learning all of these essential educational skills via the church. And then those same ladies were a part of the Eastern Star and all these kind of things like that. All these particular women for sororities, all those things, they were all so closely linked together. And we see it throughout history of some of our leading black women. That was their whole trajectory, man.
Yes, sir. So the church definitely led a part in educating, a lot of our people. Those churches became, our schoolhouses, right?
Yes.
Yes, they became our schoolhouses, man. And I kind of hate that we don't have that no more. And I'm not saying where we have to be in the schoolhouses, but we don't have a lot of our own that's teaching our kids because it's a difference than for a white European woman, because they are dominating right now the educational field. You got
Yes.
more white
Yes.
women than you do of any black. They're leading, and I think it's about a 3% of black women in the educational field, 3%, and there's about 1% of black males in the education.
Trust me,
1%.
I've been there. I
Yeah.
taught at more than one school, and I might have been the only male on campus. Like
Yes.
easy,
Yes.
sure,
It's
easy.
1%, y'all. So, and
Yeah.
and it was more intimate at that time. We understood our children, right? Now, they don't understand our children. They trying to diagnose our child with this, that, and the third, put them on type of medicine, saying they're disrupting the class, or just not understanding them. And it's not that one-on-one intimate anymore, because you got 20 or 30 people in the class, so they can't be direct with what I'm saying, all 30 children, and make sure that they getting what they supposed to be getting, man. They teaching it, they have to go
And
on to the next 30.
if you have an elder in your life, in your community, just talk to them about how their schooling was before integration. I have almost 100% rate on this question when I talk to elders about how their education was before integration. Most times they say that was the best education of their life. Was those little small segregated schools that had used hand-me-down books and an old rundown desk, and you probably had more than one age group in one room with that one teacher. And look how phenomenal that teacher was. She was able to teach multiple grades at one time in one lesson. You know how complex that is? That's
Yep.
amazing.
Yes, sir.
But the more I studied those old black schools the past 3 or 4 years of my life, I started seeing the whole church connection. A lot of our HBCUs were birthed out of the church.
Yeah.
They were birthed in the basement of those churches. Some of those HBCUs that we have right now.
Most definitely. I talk about that in one of the presentations. And matter of fact, let me give this book, real quick for the people, because we want to make sure we give. So, and I got a tons of other books that I got back there that I'll probably show in a minute, but we've been definitely showing this work right here of the Black Church, right?
Oh,
Book.
Kofi, let's tell them. Let's tell them, Kofi. It is available on Amazon Prime. It's 2 parts. They're like an hour and 49 minutes a piece. I believe it was $2.99.
Yeah,
Kofi?
it's yeah,
$2.99
well, it was $2.99
a
for
piece.
episode one.
1 and 2.
Yeah, no, for one, and it was $6 and some change.
Not for the whole thing. That's 1 and 2 together.
Yeah, $6 and something
Yeah.
for the whole thing, but
Whole thing,
$2.99
yeah.
if you want
A
to watch
piece.
episode one. Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
a piece.
Yep, a piece.
And it's also available on the PBS site. I'm only saying that because some people out there that's listening, you're probably not going to read a 200-something page book, and that's fine, which is why it's important that these documentaries and movies exist. I know some folks totally against those things, but we got to admit it. We're not all going to be scholars and sit down reading books and spending money on books. So if you can't do that, take $2.99, check out the documentary. And I found out something recently last night, Kofi, watching it again.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of this book was word for word in the documentary. You realize that?
Oh, for sure, man. When I watched it, that's why
I was word for word in the documentary.
Yep. So if you got the book and you done read the book,
you saw it.
You know, shoot, you saw the documentary.
It's good getting the visuals, of course, and it's good seeing those scholars and those reverends talk out of their own mouth and seeing the imagery and all that. That's very, very important. You know.
Yep. So and I didn't watch, but episode 1 because, like I said, hey, shoot, I read the book, so it's it's no need for me watching 2 because I'm following everything that they was actually saying in the documentary, man. So, and that was just amazing to me how they took that and made a book. Made a book. Made a book. That's amazing, man. That's amazing. So I mean,
discuss that later, you and I in private.
Yep.
That was amazing though. It was amazing.
And this is the other book right here. I don't have the hard copy on this book, but this is, and she's also in the documentary. Evelyn Brooks Higginbotham, if I'm saying her last name right. The book is called The Righteous Disconnect, The Woman Movement in the Black Baptist Church, 1880 to 1920. And I bought the Kindle about a year ago or a year and a half ago, just for a presentation that I had to do. But she goes through those things. She has something on the Black church. She also talks about some of the things and some of the women Seanathan talked about. She also talked about HBCUs being birthed in the basement of churches, which I talk about some of those things also in my book. I mean, not in my book, but in my presentation.
Let's brush on it right quick. I know the time flying. Let's brush on it. The documentary called Unspoken, once again on Amazon Prime as well. Man, look, if you got Amazon Prime or not, I don't know who in the chat or who watching this going to have Prime or not, but man, go in there. They got wonderful documentaries on there, truth be told. It's not talked about too often. I don't know why. But Unspoken is another documentary about Black Christianity, things of that nature, the Black church, and wonderful documentary. A lot of sources given, great scholars on there, in my opinion. Go and check that out. I can't remember the cost on that one, but it's not too much.
Yeah, I think it was $5.99 for that documentary. I think it was $5.99, and I went into that with some bias too. And the reason why I'm saying I went into that with the bias, for those who may be a part of the conscious community, there are some people in there. Are 3 people in there specifically that was in some debates. I think his brother name was Vince Bantu or whatever his name. I actually had I think that's his name. I can't particularly. It was another guy. Can't remember his name, but I remember his face. And it was another pastor, intellectual pastor, who was also at the debate that Bantu had with Jabari. So those 3, but they had other people that was also in there. So I went in with bias, but it turned out to be a pretty good documentary. And the reason why I said that was a lot of stuff I have read in over the years, right, which made me pull out that made me pull out some of these books. So I went and pulled out this book right here. I went and pulled out this book right here. I went and pulled out this book right here. I went and pulled out this book right here. I went and pulled out, which we ain't gonna say pulled this book out because this was already part of the discussion as well. This is our great Carter G. Woodson, the history of the Negro Church, right?
Yeah.
This book right here, we're gonna talk about hip hop for a few minutes. And this one right here, I recommend The Journey from a Text to Translation. It talks about all the different denominations. It talks about all the Bibles before you get to the King James Version. We know that the King James Version of the Bible is very popular in the Black community or in the Black household. A lot of times when I was in the church and having discussions with people, they will always say, "What Bible is that? That ain't the King James." So a lot of our families don't believe that if it ain't the King James Version, then it ain't the real Bible. So the King James Version was very popular. It's still very popular in the Black community or in the Black churches, but we know there was tons of Bibles before you even get to the King James Version of the Bible, and it goes through the lessons of the Bibles. And even when the printing press was created in the first Gutenberg Bible, which the printing press was by Gutenberg, right, in the I think the 15th century, right, when they started where it was able to mass produce Bibles. But there were tons of Bibles before you get to the King James Version, and then there's tons of Bibles after the 1611 King James Version of the Bible. So that documentary was pretty good. And I'm saying it from a historical standpoint, and not from a belief standpoint. You can keep your belief standpoint somewhere else when you're having a conversation with me, because belief is accepting something without knowing. Belief is surrendering something without facts, proof, and evidence. And for me, you got to have facts, you got to have proof, and you got to have evidence for me. So I liked it because it was on a historical standpoint and not from a belief standpoint.
Right. In the back of this book that we're talking about, there is a large recommended reading list. Did you catch that, Kofi?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Most definitely.
At the back of the book, there's a large recommended reading list, and I'm saying it because on the Unspoken documentary, there's actually a website like the unspokenmovie.com or something like that. You can go in there and click on there. It's a drop-down bar, and it shows you a list of all the sources that they're citing for the documentary. So I want to put that on the forefront of people's mind. Like, it's not just folks sitting around talking about what they believe, like he just said. You got all the text on there. You can go read it for yourself.
Right.
I advise reading it for yourself, and see how you feel about it after that.
Yes, sir. Because especially if you're a research type of guy and you understand research methodology, then like what you saying right there, the recommended and the sources. The most I enjoy reading books, but the most important part of the book or the body of the book or the anatomy of the book to me is the sources and if they have the recommendation of reading and their notes in the back. That is the most important to me. And most of the time, I'm going to flip before I even start reading. I'm going to the back of the book first. That's just me, because I want to see what type of perspective, where they're pulling their sources, they're citing material and information from. So that's just the research guy.
The book has a ton of notes per chapter. Ton of notes per chapter back of the book.
Right. So that's just with me. And we
can go into this a little bit, right? Henry Louis Gates Jr., as Kofi and I talked about this in private. For some folks in the Black community, they're not crazy about Henry Louis Gates Jr. for various reasons. They don't like him, they don't rock with him, whatever it might be. But I own probably 4 or 5 of his books. You can feel how you feel emotionally. They're all well researched, well put together. I want to say the word straightforward, easy to read for anybody that's just starting to get into the game, like easily accessible information. So I definitely advise the man books. How you feel about it emotionally, I can't help you with that. But as far as the information, definitely advise go and check his work out. And documentaries.
Yeah, and it doesn't have and the way they feel, it don't have anything to do with the information, and in particular, it has a way on, I guess, his audience. I see that, and I looked last night, also after we had the discussion, and most of them is pertaining to his audience. His audience, they like, they feel like he's playing the fence with the black folks, and the white folks. You know what I'm saying? He's in between. He's not all the way over here with the with the black folks. And a lot of his documentaries or the things that he put out, his audience is more geared toward the white community, or the same thing that we talked about. And it don't have to end, and it's with anybody. It's like your percent, or it's all depend. Okay, his audience is going to be targeted somewhere else, because he knows that if he gets this certain type of audience, he may be able to get this particular type of bag. He may be able to get this particular type of look. So they just sometimes believe that he is compromising himself for the bag, compromising himself for overall exposure or something, and something in that sense. But his documentaries, I hadn't got but one of his books, but I was familiar with him, didn't know I had a book, didn't know he had books out prior to me and Sean having a conversation about a month or 2 months ago. Might have been about 2 months ago. We had the conversation, and then we put this in motion to do the show. But man, let's go on, man. Let's go on to my darn what we got, the music segment next, man.
Let's do it.
Okay. And we can't, and sorry, y'all, we can't, man, we I mean, we could keep going on about the black church and a lot of the contributions with the black church did in the conception of the black church. And before we do that, though, what do you think happened? What do you think happened? Okay, the churches, they were church, they were schools. They produced education. They was the parents of the civil rights movements. They was assemblies for setting up rebellions. They got all type of laws passed. They fought for human rights, civil rights, human rights. They got all type of, like I said, all type of laws passed. They were the forerunners of creating intelligent men. So what do you think happened? They was very heavy into the community, and now the black church has become a place where it's they're not in the community no more. So they're not, things that's going on right now in the black communities, they are absent. Now you might see Reverend Jesse Jackson, who was also a predominant reverend at that time. Yes. You know what I'm saying, an activist, and his student, if I would say, because Al Sharpton admired the things that Reverend Jesse Jackson was doing at that time, right? So what do you, so? But you had Martin Luther King, you had Clayton Powell Jr., who was also senior. Martin Luther Jr. Martin Luther Senior. So you had a lot, and tons of other people on the front. Harry Tubman, which we're gonna talk about.
It was so many pastors, man.
Man, it was so many people. So,
like I said, it was a normal trajectory in my observation. It was a normal path. It was a normal course, right? It's like going to college, get your associates, then your bachelor's, then your master's. This is the trajectory of life. That's how it was at the time.
So what I'm gonna say what I think happened. I think what happened, this is just my opinion. I think what happened was, during the civil rights, we know that the black church was the parents of the civil rights. There will be no civil rights without the black church. That's just point blank, period, right?
Yeah, that's
you don't have to believe me. Just go through the historical record and just go down the line and look at the things that happened from, I'm gonna say, from 1897 all the way up to the civil rights, movement, and the things that they got done during the civil rights in the 50s, the 60s, and the 70s. So you don't have to take my word for it. But I think what happened was Martin Luther King Jr., Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., when he began to push the peaceful protesting, turn the other cheek, right? I believe that's when everything. That's when it was a turn for the black church. Now all we have to do, they can hose us, they can sick the dogs on us, they can shoot us at point blank range, they can hang us, they can beat us with bitty clubs. We turn the other cheek. All we have to do is just pray for our enemies. That's all we have to do. They just need prayer, right? But when we talked earlier, the black church was assemblies for liberation. They believed through their liberation, they will have to bring bloodshed, right? Right. So that point, I'm saying all the way up until the peaceful protesting. I think this is just my opinion. I think that's when the church took the turn where they were no longer interested in being activists and liberating our people or being involved in some of the social things that goes on in our community. That's just my opinion.
You know what else too? Because it's a multi-pronged problem, right? So we talk about a multi-pronged solution, if you will. It's more than one variable, of course. I think I mentioned way earlier in the conversation about those pastors and reverends and preachers. They were some of the most prominent men in the community, right on side of politicians and whatnot, right? I think when you put the political aspect of today on it, a lot of pastors and reverends don't want to touch these topics because they're being funded by some politicians. They're being funded by some of these parties to say certain things and do certain things. They won't touch certain things with a 10-foot pole because it's like, I don't want to mess my positions up on the chessboard of life. I don't want to mess my standing up. So I don't want to speak on certain things. I don't want to get involved in certain things. It's a lot of behind the door, closed door politics going on with it, man.
Yeah,
that's only one part of it.
Yeah, that's just on the one part of
one thing. Yeah,
but
we can take 2 hours on the rest of it.
Yeah, and that that could have they're like their churches are 501c3, right? They have 501c3. They have
it is a business. Yeah,
it is a business, right? So and when you go back and you look, the purpose of them having that also for the churches was so that they can go into the community and do things in the community, and the community funds certain thing that goes on with the church and the church's needs. So the church is able to get back out there, because the whole thing is that you able to get funding out from outside of the church, from your community, then take that money and funnel that money back in the community to make your community better, right?
Yep.
So that they have lost the scope of that as well, because of some of the things that you talked about, and some of the things that I think that it changed our mindset, it changed our ideology with the peaceful protesting.
I'm gonna go one more prong, right? When it comes to the parishioners, not just the pastor side, but the parishioner side of the fence. Like you said, around the civil rights time, MLK assassination and other kind of people getting assassinated and assaulted, a lot of the parishioners started thinking like, you know what, we're not doing that no more, bro. And it started turning away. So you get to current times, we have a social injustice right now. Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton going to fly out to the city. The young folks like, man, get back on the airplane, but we don't need y'all out here. That might as well stop all that, bro. Like we way past that. We ain't even on that time no more. That time that came and went. So as far as the parishioners, even looking to them for leadership and guidance and instruction, man, bro. The TV series The Godfather of Harlem is a good example, right? Whenever it be going down in Harlem, all this stuff going on, Adam Clayton Powell Jr. was able to go out there and talk to the community and get them to not protest or not riot or to chill out, or he had that kind of power with his voice. That's pretty much damn near gone now, bro. Like, nah, we're not going for that. We're not doing that. So as far as the young community, we're seeing it way different now, bro. And that's just one more prong, right?
Yeah, man. Let's get into the I like this discussion though, man. Yeah, I really like this discussion. Sure. Let's get into the music, man. Yeah. And I'm gonna read something real quick. This is the music segment, and this is I want to talk about let me set the tone. Old school spiritual. We're gonna try to keep this trend of what we got. So we did an honoring. We honored two reverends, um, who were great men, and who did a lot, right? So now we want to talk about the old schools. I want to talk about, I mean, before we get into the music, the origin of gospel music, right? Gospel music was born from a traditional hymn and spiritual songs the Africans sang during the slave era. The spirits were songs of hope, songs by the enslaved people before freedom/emancipation. The traditional hymns were introduced in the United States by the Europeans who had settled in North America. So they took what they had with the spirituals, with those spirituals that they had. Because when we talk about, we talked about praise singing or shout ringing a while ago. This is something that comes from out of Africa that you see in the churches, right? Especially if you look at Seanathan, Seanathan in South Carolina. You look at South Carolina, you look at Georgia, you look at the Atlanta, you will see this was definitely very prevalent in that area, you know. So that comes from out of there. So they merged. When we talking about syncretism, even then, syncretism, when they come over here, they will still practice some of their African traditional religion, or what we call kimoyo, and they will syncretize what they had, whether they was a Catholic, whether they was a Methodist, whether they, you know, at that particular time, Catholic and Methodist, Baptist came later on, but you had Protestant, but most of the slaves would be Catholic or Methodist. And because the British didn't believe in converting Africans or into to Protestant, right? So you will see those two, right? But they would synchronize their African traditions with that and practice that, you know, at night. And some of them are still doing it. You don't have to do it. You're not enslaved anymore, far as that. You don't have to syncretize your belief system with somebody else's belief system within this day. But let's talk about Killer Mike. New album, Michael, was released on June the 6th, 2023 on Loma Vista. Killer Mike, you know, is an Atlanta rapper based out of Atlanta, right? You know, at one time he was signed to Outkast record label, right? And I love Killer Mike. So again, I wanted to define what old school spirituals was. Gospel music comes out of those old Negro spirituals, right? So if you listen to Killer Mike's new album that was released June the 16th, the name of the CD is called Michael, right? And I hadn't had time. I wanted to go try to check out some of his videos, because I seen at least 3 of them I seen where he was talking, you know, with interviews. I'm gonna say his interviews, right? Because I think he did this on purpose, right? So when you listen to his album, bro, his album sound like an old Negro spiritual album, bro. He's talking about liberation through bloodshed, bro. He's talking about the things that the black church ain't doing today, bro. He's talking about education. He's talking about repenting. He's talking about, you know, respecting he's got a song, man, where he's respecting, man. What is it called? Something for the junkies, right? So he's talking about people that we walk past on an everyday basis, man. He talk about his mother being motherless. He talk about don't let the devil, man. We talking about the devil. He got a song where my favorite song is High and Holy, right? Featuring Ty Dolla $ign, right? And he has a tour called High and Holy. But man, this entire album sound like you in a Negro spiritual, man. Like it made me want to get up like my ancestors did and, you know, ring shout, man, stomp my feet and clap my hands, bro, and sing every lyric that he got, man, in a circle, man. So mine was for the Killer Mike.
Let's not forget, he brought back Andre 3000 on that thing.
Yeah,
he brought out 3 stacks.
And I'm gonna tell you, his scientist and engineer. I might get blasted for this. He should have kept Future off of it. I don't like Future. He should have kept Future. I love the earlier Future work, but this new Future stuff, I don't like it. I don't like it. And he should have just left Future off of it. But the song is fire.
To combine what you just said, though, if a person goes through the whole history of Killer Mike, all his interviews, A lot of things he always talking about, especially around political times and things like that. You know that man is totally steeped in that old black tradition, those old black schools we talked about, them old black schools,
Mhm.
those old black church ladies. He is steeped in that, so it's only right that the end result is what it is, man. He come from that tradition, bro.
Mhm.
The churches, the schools, the community, things he always talking about and harping on. That's it. Only makes sense to me.
Yeah, man. He's and I like what he's doing. He's a very intelligent man.
Yes, come on
Um,
now.
very
Yes,
intelligent man. He's an activist in his community,
yes,
man.
he
So,
is.
so he's
Highly,
definitely an activist in his
highly,
community, man.
highly.
So shout out to Killer Mike, man. So that was my part for the
Yeah.
music segment.
So my music part segment, man. Overall, I'm gonna talk about Christian rap, right? Christian rap. So this is like a new thing to me as far as my musical life, right? I know it exists for a long time. I never tapped in at all. I'm gonna do a little small 20-second, 30-second story about how I came across it, right? So I'm in the gym working out, and most times there's a big, huge speaker on there. Whoever gets to the gym first, connect the Bluetooth, you rocking what you rocking with. I get in the gym, these two young guys in there before me. Okay, it's cool. And the music is rocking. It's hip hop. They spitting bars, they doing their thing. I tapped the young brother like, man, who is that? And the homeboy showed me his phone, and it was Christian rap on Spotify. So whenever they left, I got curious, started looking it up. And bro, like, for us traditional hip hop guys, you like, the word play and the metaphors and the delivery and the style and the swag and all that of traditional classical rap. But you want some good messages, some good themes, positivity. At our age, most of the chat probably in their 30s, early 40s. I don't need no more gun bars, right? I don't need no gun bars. I don't need no how many bricks you sold, how many pills you popped last night. I don't need that at that point in my life. So there are some very, very phenomenal rapping Christian rappers out there, man. And the one I highlight today is the homie Lecrae out of Houston, Texas. I didn't know that till last night, down south, brother. His album is a mixtape. His first mixtape is called Church Clothes, right? Christian hip hop artist Lecrae released in May 10th. This is 2012, hosted by The Cannon, DJ Don Cannon. He featured No Malice of the Clips, right? Produced by Night Wonder, things of that nature. The mixtape was downloaded over 100,000 times in 48 hours, Kofi. 100,000 downloads in 48 hours, right? Got critical acclaim for it. And yeah, so you got a lot of pushback for it because in the church world, they were most times against what they call secular music. Whenever Kurt Franklin came out with his stomp and all that, it was a lot of pushback on it not being a traditional gospel music, right? But you see the evolution once again, the young generation coming in, bringing in our swag, bringing our style, but you still got that I want to say that Christian back into it. It's an incredible mix, man.
And was Lecrae? He wasn't he when he first come out though. He wasn't a Christian rapper, was he? Or was he a Christian? Because I mean I'm familiar.
I only know him from that. I don't know him before that, so I
Yeah,
couldn't even tell you.
yeah. Because I think he was he was, and maybe not. But because I heard some songs from it from the past, and then I just thought just maybe over the last maybe 5 or 10 years. Not 5 or 10 years. I don't even think I ain't think it was that long. You said this was what
12?
2012,
Yeah,
2012.
bro. That's crazy.
So it might have was because I didn't learn about him until this might have been 15, 16, maybe
And,
have been.
Kofi will tell you in our DMs on Instagram, I probably send him a different Christian rap person for the past month, almost on a daily basis, man. They got some fire females in there too, bro. These ladies lighting it up, man. They ain't talking about no pound town and all that. They ain't talking about no craziness, exploiting their bodies and all that. And these females showing high ability and skills on that mic, man. Spitting, bro.
Yeah, you show some of them moles I'm
You know
tomorrow.
what?
It's
I ain't even,
spitting
I ain't
ball.
even tell you this, Kofi. I ain't even tell you this in private. So the church I was going to here in this city, Pastor Byron Hippolyte, he's younger than me. If I'm 41, he probably like 35, 34, something like that. Dude got bars, bro. Dude got bars. You got albums and everything, man.
Yeah.
Christian rap, high skill level on the mic. He do his thing, man. So yeah, shout out to the Christian rap genre for those that's new to it.
All right. All right. Let's get into the last segment, man, is the woman segment, man. This segment here, like, is one of my favorite segments, and this segment is to honor one of our women, who have made major contributions in the past or in the present, right? So mine, just to stay in the theme, is Harriet Tubman. A lot of us know about Harriet Tubman, right? Born Armita Ross, March 1822 through March the 10th of 1913, was an American abolitionist and social activist. After escaping slavery, Tubman was sent on 13 missions to rescue approximately 70 enslaved people, including her family and friends, using the network of the anti-slavery activists and safe houses known as collective as the Underground Railroad. During the American Civil War, she served as an armed scout and spy for the Union Army in her later years. Tubman was an activist in the movement and woman suffrage. Born into slavery in Dorchester County, Maryland, Tubman was beaten and whipped by various enslavers as a child. Early in her life, she suffered a traumatic head wound when an irate overseer threw a heavy metal weight instead to intending to hit another slave, but hit her instead. The injury caused dizziness, pains, and spells and hypersomnia, which occurred throughout her life. After her injury, Tubman began experiencing strange visions and visions, which she ascribed as a uh, pre-motion from God. This experience, combined with her Methodist upbringing, led to the becoming of devoted, and she was a Christian. She was a Methodist Christian, and a lot of people back in that time, like I said, they was either Catholic or they were Methodist before you get to all these other different denominations, right? And Methodist, you had more black people that was a part of the Methodist Church at that time, because the Methodists practiced they was against slavery. They began to preach against slavery. So that draw a lot of free slaves and those who were enslaved to the Methodists. So they began to adopt Christianity and become a Methodist Christian because of some of the things which later they began to be suffer the same thing. You know what I'm saying? Segregation, you know what I'm saying? All types of things, which sprung the AME Church and the Ethiopian Church in South Africa. South Africa, Makandi was a Methodist preacher who had the same thing going on at that time. With what Richard Allen had. In 1842, Tubman escaped Philadelphia, only to return to Maryland to rescue her family soon after. Slowly, in a group time, she brought related with her out of the state, eventually guide dozens of other enslaved people to freedom. So this is me honoring Harriet Tubman. So I want to extend honor and praises to Harriet Tubman for our woman segment.
For those that have not seen the most recent Harriet Tubman film, I definitely advocate that, man. You see me always talking about films, TV shows, because I know, once again, that everybody's not a reader. Everybody's not a person to go and buy a book. So you go and check out on your streaming platform an hour and a half, 2 hour movie, kind of get a sort of a semblance of a person versus not knowing at all, right? For my highlight person, man, when I was a kid growing up, my grandmother loved Mahalia Jackson. She was big on Mahalia Jackson, man. And in the old days, I'm dating myself right now, the old cassette tape days, they had those huge things. You can get those volumes and you open it up, and they had like 6 tapes per side, right? My grandmother had some of those things.
And yeah, I remember them.
Yeah, the classic, man. So she loved Mahalia Jackson. So I'm highlighting Mahalia Jackson. To shout out to my grandmother, right? Mahalia Jackson, born 1911, passed in 1972, was an influential gospel singer, often referred to as the Queen of Gospel. Never knew that. She was born in New Orleans, right? Down south, raised in a deeply religious household, which greatly influenced her musical style and career path. Jackson began singing in the church at a very early age and later joined the gospel choir at the Greater Salem Baptist Church, where her exceptional talent was recognized. In the 1930s and 1940s, she gained popularity through her gospel performances and recordings, captivating audiences with a powerful voice and emotional delivery. Jackson music combined traditional gospel hymns with unique personal touches, earning her praise from both religious and secular audiences. Back to what I just said about 10 minutes ago about the Christian rap genre, they're combining religion and secular, bringing them together. Somebody like a Kurt Franklin, Mary, all of these more contemporary artists combining the secular and the religion together to reach more of an audience, get a wider accessibility.
For sure. We understand honor and praises to her as well, man. Let's give it up for. All right, man. And that's it, man. That concludes, man.
Yeah.
Each segment, man, that we had. We hope y'all appreciated this episode, man. We'll be back tomorrow. All right, we'll be on Instagram tomorrow for a few minutes. So
4:00 p.m. 4:00 p.m.
Mm-hmm. So
Central Standard Time.
Yeah, Central Standard Time. So y'all, pop in on Instagram, man. Get your handle for Instagram, Sean.
Yeah, you see my name on the screen right there, Seanathan Polidore. Type it in the Instagram search bar. You'll find it easy to find, man. There's not too many of those out there. So yeah.
Yep. So we'll be back. You definitely right. Ain't too many of those. You the only one.
I ain't the only one, but it ain't too many.
You know what I know.
You type in Seanathan in the search bar, you'd be surprised. I'm like, man, I got that many in the world. I was surprised, man. On Facebook, I typed it in one time. It was like a list. I was like, wow.
Yeah, we'll be.
I thought it was just me.
Yeah, but we'll be back, man.
Yeah,
and,
man. It's been a surprise tomorrow, man. Surprise lined up for you guys.
And be on the lookout. I'll be posting something in the morning. For the support. We asking for y'all support, which we already know, especially our Instagram, our family, man. Shout out to
the gram,
man.
Bookstagram, baby. Bookstagram.
Bookstagram is the best, man. I want to shout out y'all, man. We got a community over there, man.
What a community, man.
Yes, sir, man. And I appreciate them for the short period of time. Me being on there, you a big dog over there. I just got over there, man. And
small things to a giant, like they say. Small things to a giant, baby.
Yeah, so
it's a good community. If you're a book, most of the chat is. If you're a book enthusiast, you're a book lover, man. Go on your search handle, type in, Bookstagram, look around, find some black Bookstagrammers, man, and just it's a universe over there, man. It's a universe.
Yes, it's definitely something different. Yeah, it's something special. If you like us, you love books, you're an avid reader, you like sharing, man. That's definitely a space for you over there.
You ain't never seen before.
Yes, sir, man. So shout out again to Bookstagram, man. So again, we appreciate everybody who stayed the whole duration of the show. We appreciate those who popped in and popped out. We appreciate those who may look at this video later on in the archives.
That's right.
Also, later on this evening or tonight, if you're riding in your car, or you're cleaning up your house, or you at work sitting down at a desk, go to Spotify, man. Type in the
It will be on there on Spotify tonight, as we always do every episode.
Yes, sir.
I will upload on Spotify and Anchor podcast platform. Once again, this is good, clean content. We did an 1.5 show, no fussing, no cussing, no arguing, no tearing down women, no tearing down anybody's community, no offending people. The kids can hear it. We good.
Yes, sir. That's what it's all about. That's what
kid tested, mother approved. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, sir, man. So again, man, we want to say peace. We hope y'all have a productive day. We appreciate y'all, and man, be on the lookout for episode 5. Which is going to be a celebration. And I'm definitely excited about it because me and his brother will be side by side taping the live. It's going to be a celebration. I'm telling y'all, we got something coming out the day after that, but we gonna celebrate it the day before it actually come out. So we gonna be in the same town, rocking in the same place, man. I'm excited, man, and I'm telling you, it's gonna be a celebration. But we out of here, man. Y'all have a nice and productive Sunday. Peace.
Ah.